Alex never thought much about love stories. He was the kind of guy who spent his Friday nights reading tech blogs instead of going to parties. His friends always teased him about being too serious. But Alex liked his quiet life. Books made sense. Computers made sense. People, well, that was complicated. It was a Tuesday morning, and Alex was running late for his engineering class. The campus coffee shop was packed with students cramming for their final exams. Everyone looked tired and stressed, clutching their coffee cups like they were lifelines. Alex just wanted his usual black coffee and to get out of there as quickly as possible. He stood in line, checking his phone and mentally reviewing his presentation for later that day. The barista was moving slowly, and Alex could feel his patience wearing thin. He had exactly 15 minutes to grab his coffee and make it to class on time. That's when everything changed. A girl with bouncy brown hair and bright blue eyes was trying to balance 3 coffee cups, a stack of art supplies, and what looked like a half-finished painting. She was talking animatedly to her friend about some art project, using her hands to gesture wildly. Alex noticed she had little splatters of paint on her fingers and even a small dot of yellow paint on her cheek. Her name was Riley, though Alex didn't know it yet. Riley was everything Alex wasn't: loud, colorful, spontaneous. She was the type of person who wore mismatched socks on purpose and thought life was too short to drink boring coffee. The disaster happened in slow motion. Riley was backing away from the counter, still talking to her friend, when she bumped straight into Alex. The impact wasn't hard, but it was enough to send Alex's coffee flying. The hot liquid splashed across the floor, creating a small brown puddle right in the middle of the busy walkway. Oh no, oh no, oh no. Riley spun around, her eyes wide with horror. I am so sorry. I didn't see you there. Alex stood there, holding his empty cup, watching the coffee drip from his shirt. Usually, something like this would have annoyed him. He had a schedule to keep, and now he was going to be late. But when he looked at Riley's face, all flustered and genuinely upset, he felt something unexpected. Instead of irritation, he felt amused. It's okay, he heard himself saying. Really, it's no big deal. But Riley wasn't having it. She set down her art supplies and immediately started looking around for napkins. No, it's not okay. Look at your shirt. And you probably needed that coffee for your exam or something important. Actually, I was just going to class, Alex said, trying to help clean up the mess. And I can always get another coffee. Riley looked at him like he had just told her he could fly. You're not mad. Most people would be furious right now. Alex shrugged. Accidents happen. Besides, it's just coffee. That's when Riley's friend appeared, looking slightly out of breath. Riley, we need to go. Professor Martinez wants to see our projects in 10 minutes. Riley looked torn between helping Alex and following her friend. She chewed her bottom lip, a habit Alex would later find adorable. Listen, she said quickly, let me buy you a new coffee. It's the least I can do. You don't have to. Alex started, but Riley was already waving him off. Yes, I do. My mom always taught me to fix my mistakes. She turned to her friend. Go ahead. I'll catch up in a few minutes. Her friend raised an eyebrow but nodded. Don't be late, Riley. You know how Professor Martinez gets. After her friend left, Riley marched up to the counter with determination. 2 coffees, please. 1 black coffee for. She turned to Alex with a questioning look. Alex, he supplied. Alex, she repeated with a smile. And 1 caramel macchiato with extra whipped cream for me. While they waited for the coffee, Riley kept apologizing. She explained that she was always clumsy when she was nervous, and she was nervous because she had to present her final art project that morning. She talked with her hands, and Alex found himself watching the way she moved. So different from his own careful, measured gestures. I'm Riley, by the way, she said, extending a paint-stained hand. Art major, professional coffee spiller, and apparently destroyer of perfectly good Tuesday mornings. Alex shook her hand, surprised by how warm it was. Engineering major, coffee drinker, and apparently very understanding about coffee-related accidents. Riley laughed. and Alex decided it was a nice sound. Not too loud, not fake. Just genuine happiness. When was the last time someone had laughed? At one of his jokes, when their coffee was ready, Alex expected Riley to grab hers and run. She was clearly in a hurry, and he didn't want to make her late. But instead, she looked around the crowded coffee shop and then back at him. Would you? Would you want to sit for a minute? I mean, I know you probably have somewhere to be, but I feel terrible about the whole coffee thing. And she trailed off, looking suddenly shy. Alex checked his watch. He had about 8 minutes before class started. The smart thing would be to take his coffee and leave. But something about Riley made him want to stay. Maybe it was the way she seemed, genuinely interested in making things right. Or maybe it was just curiosity about this girl who was so different from anyone he usually talked to. Sure, he said. I have a few minutes. They found a small table near the window. Riley immediately launched into stories about her art project, her hands moving as she described the sculpture she was working on. She talked about how she loved creating things that made people feel something, anything. Her eyes lit up when she described mixing colors and the satisfaction of getting a piece just right. Alex found himself actually listening, not just waiting for his turn to talk. Usually, conversations felt like work to him, but Riley made it easy. She asked him about his engineering classes, and when he started explaining his robotics project, she leaned forward with genuine interest. So you're basically creating a robot that can help people? She asked, her eyes wide. That's incredible. I make pretty things, but you're making things that actually help the world. Alex felt his cheeks warm. He wasn't used to people being impressed by his work. Most people's eyes glazed over when he started talking about programming and circuits. They talked about their different approaches to problem solving. Riley was all about feeling and intuition, while Alex relied on logic and planning. They were complete opposites, but somehow the conversation flowed naturally. Before Alex knew it, 20 minutes had passed. He was officially late for class, but he found he didn't care as much as he should have. Oh my goodness, what time is it? Riley suddenly asked, checking her phone. I am so late. Professor Martinez is going to kill me. She jumped up, gathering her art supplies in a rush. Alex stood up too, not wanting the conversation to end but not sure how to make it continue. Thank you, Riley said, pausing in her frantic packing, for being so nice about everything. Most people would have been really mean about the coffee thing, but you were just kind. She looked at him for a moment, and Alex felt something shift in the air between them. Without warning, Riley stood on her tiptoes and kissed his cheek. It was quick, barely a second, but Alex felt like he'd been struck by lightning. The kiss was soft and warm, and it left a faint scent of vanilla and paint in the air. Alex stood frozen, his hand automatically moving to touch the spot where her lips had been. Riley stepped back, looking as surprised as Alex felt. Her cheeks turned pink, and she stared at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. She stammered, which was the first time all morning she'd seemed at a loss for words. They stood there for a moment, neither sure what to say. Finally, Riley grabbed her supplies and headed for the door. See you around, Alex. She called over her shoulder, but there was something different in her voice now. Something that made Alex's heart beat faster. As Alex watched her disappear into the crowd of students, he realized he was still touching his cheek. The spot where she kissed him felt warm, and he couldn't seem to stop smiling. He was definitely late for class now, but for the first time in his college career, Alex didn't care. All he could think about was Riley's laugh, the way she moved, her hands when she talked, and the unexpected softness of that brief kiss. Walking to class in a daze, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that something important had just happened. He just wasn't sure what. Alex couldn't focus on anything for the next week. Every time he tried to work on his engineering assignments, his mind wandered back to that moment in the coffee shop. He kept replaying Riley's laugh, the way her eyes sparkled when she talked about her art, and most of all, that unexpected kiss on his cheek. His roommate Danny noticed something was different. Dude, you've been staring at that same page for 20 minutes, Danny said. looking up from his own textbook. What's going on with you? Alex closed his engineering manual and rubbed his eyes. Nothing. Just tired, I guess, right? Danny said with a knowing grin. This wouldn't have anything to do with that girl from the coffee shop, would it? The one you mentioned like 50 times this week. Alex felt his cheeks turn red. Had he really been talking about Riley that much? I didn't mention her 50 times, okay? Maybe 49. Danny laughed. Seriously though, why don't you just go back to the coffee shop? Maybe you'll see her again. The idea had crossed Alex's mind several times, but it felt weird. What if she thought he was following her? What if that kiss didn't mean anything to her? What if he was reading too much into a simple thank you gesture? But by Thursday, Alex couldn't stand it anymore. He found himself walking to the coffee shop at exactly the same time he'd been there. The week before, he told himself he was just getting his regular coffee, nothing more. The coffee shop was busy again, filled with students preparing for another round of exams. Alex ordered his black coffee and looked around casually, trying not to seem like he was searching for someone specific. His heart sank a little when he didn't see Riley anywhere. He was about to leave when he heard a familiar voice behind him. Alex, is that really you? He turned around, and there she was. Riley stood there with paint under her fingernails and a huge smile on her face. She was wearing a bright yellow sweater that somehow had tiny paint splatters on it already, even though it was still morning. Hi, Alex said, suddenly feeling nervous. How did your presentation go last week? It went great. Professor Martinez loved my sculpture. Thanks for asking. Riley's smile got even bigger. I can't believe you're here. I was just thinking about you were. The words slipped out before Alex could stop them. Riley nodded enthusiastically. I was telling my roommate about our conversation, and she said I should have gotten your number. But then I realized I didn't even know your last name. She paused. It's weird, but I've been hoping I'd run into you again. Alex felt a warm feeling spread through his chest. Really? Riley looked around the crowded coffee shop. Do you want to sit? I mean, if you're not in a hurry or anything. This time, Alex didn't hesitate. I'd like that. They found the same table they'd sat at the week before. Riley had her usual caramel macchiato, and she immediately started talking about her new project. But Alex noticed something different about her today. She seemed more focused on him, asking more questions about his life, his family, his dreams. So, what made you want to become an engineer? Riley asked, wrapping her hands around her coffee cup. Alex thought about it. Most people asked him about his major, but no one had ever asked him why he chose it. I like solving problems, he said. I like taking something that's broken and figuring out how to fix it, making things work better. Riley nodded thoughtfully. That's beautiful. I never thought about engineering that way. What about you? Why? Art. Riley's eyes lit up. I love creating things that didn't exist before. Like, this morning there was nothing, and then I mixed some colors and moved my brush. And suddenly there's something new in the world, something that came from inside me. She gestured with her hands as she talked. My family thinks I'm crazy for majoring in art. They keep asking what I'm going to do for a real job. Art is a real job, Alex said firmly. The world would be pretty boring without artists. Riley stared at him for a moment. You know, most people don't get that. They talk for over an hour. Alex learned that Riley had two younger brothers, that she was scared of spiders but loved thunderstorms, and that she put pineapple on pizza. Riley learned that Alex was an only child, that he played guitar but never performed for anyone, and that he had read every book in the science fiction section of the library. As they talked, Alex noticed how Riley really listened to him. She didn't just wait for her turn to speak like most people did. She asked follow-up questions and remembered details from things he mentioned earlier. This is going to sound strange, Riley said suddenly, setting down her coffee cup. But do you believe in fate? Alex blinked. Fate? Like, do you think some things are meant to happen? That people are meant to meet certain other people? Alex had always been logical about everything. He believed in facts, in cause and effect, in things that could be proven. But looking at Riley's earnest face, He found himself considering the question seriously. "I'm not sure," he said honestly. "Why do you ask?" Riley took a deep breath. "Because I can't stop thinking about last week. Not just our conversation, though that was amazing, but that moment when I kissed your cheek." She looked down at her hands. "I know it was just a thank you kiss, but something happened, something I've never felt before." Alex's heart started beating faster. "What kind of something?" Riley looked up at him, and Alex saw something intense in her eyes. It felt like recognition, like some part of me had been looking for you my whole life. "And I finally found you." She laughed nervously. "I know that sounds crazy. My roommate thinks I've been watching too many romantic movies." Alex didn't know what to say. The logical part of his brain was telling him that Riley was being dramatic, that she barely knew him. But another part of him, a part he usually ignored, was nodding in agreement. "It doesn't sound crazy," he said quietly. Riley's eyes widened. "It doesn't know. I mean, I've been thinking about you all week too. I kept finding excuses to walk past this coffee shop, hoping I'd see you." Riley smiled, but there was something serious in her expression now. "Alex, can I tell you something? And promise you won't think I'm completely insane." Alex nodded. "My grandmother always told me that when you meet the right person, you just know." She said it happened to her with my grandfather. They met at a dance, and she knew within 5 minutes that she was going to marry him. They were together for 52 years. Riley paused, gathering courage for what she wanted to say next. "I think you might be my person, Alex. I know we've only talked twice, and I know this is probably way too much, way too fast, but that kiss last week, it felt like coming home, like finding something I didn't even know I was looking for." Alex stared at her, his mind racing. Part of him wanted to run. This was intense. Maybe too intense. They barely knew each other. But another part of him, the part that had been thinking about her all week, wanted to know what would happen if he stayed. "Riley," he said carefully, "we don't really know each other yet." "Then let's get to know each other," she said quickly. "I'm not asking you to marry me tomorrow. I'm just asking for a chance. A chance to see if this feeling is real, if it goes somewhere." She reached across the table and touched his hand lightly. "I've never felt this way about anyone before, Alex. Never, and maybe that scares you, but it doesn't scare me. It excites me." Alex looked down at her hand on his. Her touch was warm and somehow familiar, like they'd done this 1,000 times before. "What exactly are you asking?" he said. Riley smiled. "I'm asking if you want to find out what happens next. I'm asking if you'll give us a chance to become something amazing." Alex thought about his orderly life, his careful plans, his logical approach to everything. Then he thought about how alive he'd felt talking to Riley, how much he looked forward to seeing her again. "Okay," he heard himself saying. Okay, let's see what happens next." Riley's smile was brighter than all the paint colors in her art box. Really. And for the first time in his very logical life, Alex decided to trust his heart instead of his head. Riley approached winning Alex's heart like she approached her art projects, with complete dedication and creative flair. The very next day after their coffee shop conversation, she showed up at Alex's engineering building with a brown paper bag and a thermos. "What are you doing here?" Alex asked, surprised to see her waiting outside his advanced robotics class. "Lunch delivery," Riley announced cheerfully, holding up the bag. "I made sandwiches. Turkey and cheese for you, and peanut butter and jelly for me, plus hot chocolate because it's getting cold outside." Alex looked around at his classmates filing past them. A few gave him curious looks. "You didn't have to do this." "I know I didn't have to. I wanted to." Riley's smile was infectious. "Come on. There's a nice spot by the library where we can eat." As they walked across campus, Riley chattered about her morning art class. She had a way of making even ordinary things sound interesting. When she described mixing paint colors, Alex found himself actually caring about the difference between cerulean blue and navy blue. They sat on a bench under a large oak tree. The sandwiches were simple but good, and the hot chocolate was perfect for the chilly afternoon. Alex realized he was more relaxed than he'd been in weeks. So tell me about this robotics project, Riley said, pulling her legs up under her on the bench. What exactly are you building? Alex hesitated. Most people asked about his projects to be polite, then zoned out when he started explaining. But Riley was looking at him with genuine interest. It's a robot that can help elderly people with daily tasks, he said, like reaching things on high shelves or reminding them to take their medicine. Riley's eyes widened. That's incredible. My grandmother would love something like that. She's always complaining about not being able to reach her good dishes anymore. For the next 20 minutes, Alex found himself explaining circuits and programming to someone who actually seemed to care. Riley asked thoughtful questions and made connections he hadn't expected. So it's like you're giving independence back to people, she said. That's beautiful, Alex. You're not just building a machine, you're building hope. No one had ever described his work that way before. Alex felt something warm spread through his chest. This became their routine. Riley would show up with lunch, and they would find a quiet spot to eat and talk. Sometimes she brought her sketchbook and would draw while he worked on homework. Other times, she would convince him to take walks around campus, pointing out things he'd never noticed before. The way the light hit the old brick buildings, or how the fountain made different sounds depending on the wind. A week into their lunch dates, Riley suggested something that made Alex nervous. There's an art gallery opening tomorrow night, she said casually while sharing her apple slices. With him, it's featuring student work from our department. Would you want to come with me? Alex's immediate instinct was to say no. Art gallery openings sounded crowded and social, two things he usually avoided. But the hopeful look on Riley's face made him reconsider. Will there be a lot of people? He asked. Some, but it's not huge. And I know most of the artists, so I could introduce you. Riley sensed his hesitation. We don't have to stay long. Just long enough for you to see my piece. You have artwork in the show. Riley nodded, suddenly looking shy. It's a sculpture I've been working on. I'd like you to see it. Alex found himself saying yes, even though galleries made him uncomfortable. The smile Riley gave him made it worth it. The gallery opening was smaller than Alex had feared, but still crowded enough to make him nervous. Riley stayed close to him, introducing him to her art friends as Alex, the brilliant engineer I was telling you about. She had a way of making him sound more impressive than he felt. When they reached Riley's sculpture, Alex stopped in surprise. It was a beautiful piece made of metal and glass that somehow captured the feeling of two different elements coming together to create something new. It's called convergence, Riley said quietly. I started it the day after we met. Alex stared at the sculpture, seeing how the rigid metal pieces supported the flowing glass elements, creating something that was both structured and free. It's amazing, Riley, really amazing. You inspired it, she admitted. The way we're so different but somehow fit together. That night, as Alex walked Riley back to her dorm, he realized he had actually enjoyed himself. Riley had made the crowded gallery feel manageable by staying close and making sure he always had someone to talk to. Thank you for coming tonight, Riley said when they reached her building. I know galleries aren't really your thing, actually. It was nice, Alex said, surprised to realize he meant it. Your friends are interesting. Riley beamed. They really liked you too. Jessica said you gave her great ideas for incorporating technology into her next installation. The next week, Alex decided to return the favor. He invited Riley to see his robotics lab and meet his project team. He was nervous about how his more serious classmates would react to Riley's colorful personality. He needn't have worried. Riley charmed everyone within minutes. She asked thoughtful questions about their projects and even suggested some design improvements. That impressed Professor Chen. Your girlfriend has a good eye for user experience, his lab partner Kevin said. After Riley left, she's not my girlfriend, Alex said automatically, then paused. I mean, we haven't really defined what we are. Kevin laughed. Dude, she brought you homemade cookies and spent 2 hours learning about servo motors. She's definitely your girlfriend. Alex thought about that conversation for days. Were they dating? Riley certainly acted like they were, but they'd never talked about it officially. She texted him good morning every day, brought him coffee when he was studying late, and had started holding his hand when they walked around campus. The turning point came when Alex's grandmother visited for the weekend. Alex had mentioned the visit to Riley, not really expecting anything to come of it. But on Saturday morning, Riley showed up at his dorm with a plate of chocolate chip cookies. "I hope you don't mind," she said nervously. "I thought your grandmother might like these. My mom's recipe." Alex was touched. "You didn't have to do this. I wanted to make a good impression," Riley said simply. Meeting his grandmother was clearly important to Riley, and Alex found himself caring more about how it went than he'd expected. Grandmother Chen was a tough audience, polite but reserved, protective of her only grandson. But Riley worked her magic. She listened attentively to Grandmother Chen's stories about immigrating from Taiwan, asked about her garden, and even knew some basic Mandarin phrases that made the older woman smile. "Your grandmother is wonderful," Riley said later as they walked her back to the bus station. "I can see where you get your kindness from." After Grandmother Chen left, she pulled Alex aside. "That girl loves you very much," she said in her direct way. "The question is, do you love her back?" Alex opened his mouth to give his usual careful answer, but stopped. Did he love Riley? The thought scared him, but as he considered it, he realized the answer was probably yes. Riley made him laugh. She made him try new things. She made him feel like the best version of himself. When he was with her, the world seemed brighter and more interesting. But love was a big word, and it came with expectations and complications. What if he wasn't good at it? What if he disappointed her? "She's very different from me, Grandma," Alex said. "Good," Grandmother Chen replied firmly. "Same is boring. Different makes you grow." That evening, Alex called Riley and asked if she wanted to have dinner with him. Not their usual casual lunch, but an actual dinner. At a restaurant, like a date, Riley asked, and Alex could hear the smile in her voice. "Yeah," Alex said, his heart beating fast. "Like a date. I thought you'd never ask." Riley laughed. "I was starting to think I'd have to propose to you myself." As Alex hung up the phone, he realized something had shifted. He was tired of being careful all the time. Maybe it was time to take a real chance on something, on someone who made him happy. Riley had been brave enough to declare her feelings from the beginning. Maybe it was his turn to be brave too. 3 weeks after their first official dinner date, Alex started to panic. Not the kind of panic you feel during an exam or when you're running late for class. This was deeper, scarier, the kind of panic that kept him awake at night staring at the ceiling. The problem was that he was falling for Riley hard, and that terrified him more than any engineering problem he'd ever faced. It started during their study session at the library. Riley was sitting across from him, working on a painting for her portfolio class. She had a small smudge of blue paint on her nose and was completely focused on mixing the perfect shade of green. Alex found himself watching her instead of reading his textbook, and the thought that hit him was simple and overwhelming. He could watch her do this for the rest of his life. That's when the panic began. Alex had always been a planner. He liked knowing what came next, having clear goals and logical steps to reach them. But Riley was the opposite of logical. She was spontaneous and emotional and unpredictable. What if they were too different? What if this intensity was just a phase for her? What if he wasn't interesting enough to keep her attention long term? The next morning, Alex made a list. He actually sat down with a notebook and wrote out all the reasons why dating Riley might not work, different majors that would lead to different career paths, different personalities that might clash over time, different approaches to life that could cause problems. By the time he finished the list, he had convinced himself that getting more involved with Riley would be a mistake. So he started pulling back. It began with small things. When Riley texted him good morning, he would wait a few hours before responding instead of texting back immediately. When she suggested having lunch together, he would make excuses about being busy with projects. When she invited him to another art event, he said he had too much studying to do. Riley noticed the change immediately, but she didn't push. Instead, she gave him space. Figuring he might be stressed about upcoming exams, she continued being her usual friendly self, but Alex could see the confusion in her eyes when he kept making excuses. The worst part was how miserable Alex felt. His carefully organized life suddenly seemed gray and boring. Food didn't taste as good. His favorite TV shows weren't interesting anymore. Even his robotics project, which had always excited him, felt like just another assignment. "Dude, what's wrong with you?" his roommate Danny asked one evening. Alex was sitting at his desk, staring blankly at his computer screen. "You've been acting weird for days." "Nothing's wrong," Alex mumbled. "Right? And I'm the king of the world." Danny closed his textbook and turned to face Alex. "This is about Riley, isn't it? You've been moping ever since you started avoiding her." "I'm not avoiding her, bro. She came by yesterday with cookies, and you pretended to be asleep at 3 in the afternoon." Danny shook his head. "What happened? Did you guys have a fight?" Alex sighed. "No, we didn't fight. It's just complicated." "Complicated how?" Alex struggled to put his fears into words. "She's so sure about everything. About us. And I don't know if I can match that level of certainty. What if I disappoint her? What if we're too different and it doesn't work out?" Danny stared at him. "So you're breaking up with her because you're scared it might not work out?" "We weren't really officially together," Alex said weakly. "Alex, that girl lights up like a Christmas tree when she sees you. And you've been happier in the past month than I've seen you in 3 years of being roommates." Danny leaned forward. "You're throwing away something good because you're afraid it might end badly." "That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard," Alex wanted to argue, but deep down he knew Danny was right. Fear was making his decisions for him. And that wasn't like him at all. The breaking point came a week later. Alex was walking across campus when he saw a crowd gathered near the art building. Curious despite himself, he walked over to see what was happening. In the courtyard, someone had set up a large art installation. It was made of twisted metal and broken glass, arranged in a way that looked like a heart that had been shattered and put back together wrong. The piece was beautiful but heartbreaking, and Alex felt drawn to it even though he didn't understand why. "It's called Almost," said a voice behind him. Alex turned to see Jessica, one of Riley's art friends. She was looking at the installation with a sad expression. "Riley made it?" Alex asked, though he somehow already knew the answer. Jessica nodded. "She's been working on it nonstop for the past week, barely sleeping, barely eating. She won't talk about what inspired it, but..." Jessica gave Alex a meaningful look. "I think we both know." Alex stared at the sculpture, seeing his own actions reflected in the broken pieces. Riley had created something beautiful from her pain, but knowing he had caused that pain made his chest ache. "Where is she?" he asked quietly. "Art studio, building C, 3rd floor." Jessica paused. "Alex, I don't know what happened between you two, but Riley's really hurting. She won't admit it, but she is." Alex found Riley in the studio at midnight, surrounded by canvases and sculptures. She was working on a painting, her movements sharp and angry. Paint was splattered across her clothes and hands, and her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. She looked up when he walked in, and Alex saw the surprise and guarded hope in her eyes. "Hi," she said quietly, setting down her brush. "Hi." Alex looked around at her recent work. All of it seemed to reflect sadness and longing. "I saw your installation in the courtyard." Riley shrugged, "Just working through some feelings." They stood in awkward silence for a moment. Finally, Alex found his voice. "I'm sorry," he said. "I've been a complete jerk." "You haven't been a jerk. You've been distant. There's a difference." Riley crossed her arms. "What happened, Alex? Things were going so well, and then suddenly you were too busy for everything." Alex took a deep breath. "I got scared." "Scared? Of what?" "Of this. Of us. Of how much I was starting to care about you." The words came out in a rush. "You're so confident about everything. And I kept thinking about all the ways we're different and all the reasons it might not work out." Riley's expression softened. "So you decided to make sure it didn't work out?" "I guess I did." Alex ran his hands through his hair. I know it doesn't make sense. I know it was stupid. Riley walked closer to him. Alex, do you think I'm not scared too? Do you think I don't worry about whether we're too different or whether this is real or whether I'm setting myself up to get hurt? Alex looked at her in surprise. You always seem so sure about everything. I'm sure about how I feel. That doesn't mean I'm not scared about what comes next. Riley reached out and touched his arm gently. The difference is that I think some things are worth being scared for. Alex felt something inside him break open. All the walls he'd built up over the past week came crashing down. I miss you, he said simply. I miss you so much, and I was the one who caused it. I missed you too. Riley's eyes were bright with unshed tears. I kept hoping you'd change your mind, but I didn't want to push you. I'm sorry I made you create sad art, Alex said, gesturing toward her recent paintings. Riley laughed despite her tears. Actually, some of my best work comes from strong emotions. Even the painful ones. Alex stepped closer to her. Riley, I can't promise I won't get scared again. I can't promise I'll always be as brave as you are. But I can promise that I want to try. I want to see what we could be together. Riley smiled. The first real smile he'd seen from her in weeks. That's all I've ever wanted, Alex. Just a chance. Then let's take that chance, Alex said. For real this time. When Riley hugged him, Alex felt like he could breathe properly for the first time in weeks. He realized that being scared of losing something good was better than being empty because you never tried at all. 6 months later, Alex stood outside the coffee shop where everything had started. His heart beating fast and his palms sweaty. In his backpack was a small wooden box he'd spent weeks crafting in the engineering workshop. Tonight was the night. He was going to tell Riley exactly how he felt about her. The past few months had been the happiest of Alex's life. After their conversation in the art studio, they had both made an effort to be more open about their feelings and fears. Riley had learned to give Alex time to process big emotions instead of expecting immediate responses. Alex had learned to share his worries with Riley instead of bottling them up and making assumptions. They had their differences, sure. Riley was still spontaneous and emotional, while Alex was still careful and logical. But instead of seeing these as problems, they had learned to see them as strengths. Riley pushed Alex to try new things and live in the moment. Alex helped Riley think through decisions and plan for the future. The coffee shop owner, Mrs. Patterson, had agreed to let Alex set up his surprise after closing time. She remembered both Alex and Riley as regular customers and had watched their relationship develop. With the interest of someone who had been married for 30 years, young love, she had said with a smile when Alex explained his plan, reminds me of how my husband used to surprise me. Alex had spent the afternoon decorating the coffee shop with simple string lights and Riley's favorite flowers, sunflowers that reminded her of summer and childhood. He'd recreated their usual table setup, complete with Riley's preferred caramel macchiato and his black coffee dot at exactly 7 o'clock. Alex sent Riley a text, "Meet me at our coffee shop. Trust me." Riley arrived 20 minutes later, looking curious and slightly worried. When she walked into the softly lit coffee shop and saw the flowers and lights, her hand flew to her mouth. "Alex, what is this?" Alex stood up from their table, the wooden box in his hands. "This is me being brave. Like you taught me." Riley walked slowly toward him, taking in all the details. "You did all this?" "I had help from Mrs. Patterson," Alex admitted, "but the idea was mine." When Riley reached the table, she saw the small wooden box waiting for her. It was beautiful, clearly handmade, with intricate patterns carved into the lid. "You made this?" she asked, running her fingers over the smooth wood. Alex nodded. "Open it." Inside the box, Riley found a collection of small items that told the story of their relationship. The receipt from their first coffee shop meeting, saved from when Alex had gone back to look for it the next day, a small piece of metal and glass, remnants from Riley's conversion sculpture that she had given him, ticket stubs from every movie they'd seen together, every museum they'd visited. At the bottom of the box was a small USB drive. "What's this?" Riley asked, holding up the drive. "Something I made for you," Alex said nervously. "Can I show you?" Alex pulled out his laptop and plugged in the USB drive. On the screen appeared a simple but elegant program he had designed. It looked like a digital art canvas, but when Alex clicked on it, something magical happened. It's a program that creates art based onto different input sources. Alex explained as colors began to swirl and blend on the screen. "One input is logical and structured. That's my part. The other is creative and intuitive. That's your part. Neither one can create the full picture alone, but when they work together." The screen filled with a beautiful, constantly changing pattern that was both organized and free. "Both logical and artistic," Riley breathed, watching the patterns dance. "This is incredible." "It's us," Alex said simply. "We're different, but we make something beautiful together." Riley looked up at him with tears in her eyes. "Is this your way of telling me you love me?" Alex felt his cheeks turn red, but he didn't look away. "Actually, I wanted to say something else first." He took Riley's hands in his, and she could feel them shaking slightly. "6 months ago, you told me something that scared me. You said you thought I might be your person, your mate, and I was so afraid of that intensity, so afraid of disappointing you. Then I almost ruined everything." Alex paused, gathering his courage. "But you were right, Riley. You were right about us from the very beginning. I just needed time to catch up to what you already knew." He squeezed her hands gently. "You make me braver. You make me want to try new things. You make me see the world in ways I never imagined." Riley was crying now, but she was smiling too. "I love how passionate you are about everything," Alex continued. "I love how you see beauty in ordinary things. I love how you believed in us even when I didn't believe in myself. And yes, Riley, I love you. I love you so much it scares me sometimes. But it's the good kind of scared." "Alex," Riley whispered, "I know I'm not as spontaneous as you are. I know I'll probably always need time to process big changes. But if you'll have me, I want to be your person too. I want to be your mate, your partner, whatever you want to call it. I want to see what kind of beautiful things we can create together." Riley launched herself into Alex's arms, kissing him properly for the first time since that day in the art studio. When they finally broke apart, she was laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes," she said, over and over. "Yes, yes, yes. I love you too, Alex. I've loved you since that first day when you were so kind about the spilled coffee." They held each other in the softly lit coffee shop, surrounded by sunflowers and the gentle glow of string lights. "You know," Riley said eventually, "my grandmother would have loved you. She always said the best relationships are when two people help each other become the best versions of themselves." "Is that what we do?" Alex asked. Riley pulled back to look at him. "You've made me more thoughtful, more patient. You've taught me that it's okay to slow down sometimes and really think things through. And you've made me more adventurous," Alex said, "more open to possibilities I never would have considered before." A year later, Alex and Riley were planning their life after graduation. Alex had been accepted to a graduate program in robotics, while Riley had been offered a spot in a prestigious art residency program. They were in different cities, but they had already figured out how to make it work. Alex would visit on weekends, and Riley would spend her breaks with him. Their friends joked that Riley had claimed Alex from day one, but Alex knew the truth was more complicated and more beautiful than that. Riley hadn't claimed him. She had seen something in him that he hadn't seen in himself, and she had been brave enough to act on it. In return, Alex had learned to match her bravery with his own. Love, he discovered, wasn't just about finding the right person. It was about being willing to become the right person for someone else. On quiet evenings, they would still go to their coffee shop and sit at their usual table. Mrs. Patterson would bring them their regular orders and smile at the young couple who had found love in her little shop. And sometimes, when Riley laughed at one of Alex's jokes, or when Alex surprised Riley with a spontaneous adventure, they would remember that first kiss on the cheek and marvel at how one small moment of bravery had changed both of their lives forever. Love, they learned, often begins with a single moment of connection, but it grows through 1,000 small choices to keep choosing each other every single day.